Hello everybody, Michael the Librarian of Magic here, finding and cataloging the magic and pointing you to it. I'm back once again for another recap of the Disney original content for the week of January the 10th, which is this last week. Getting a little bit faster from with video production, still recovering from being sick the last week, so things are getting a little better, getting back on track. I did decide this week I wanted to create a different feature, different branding, so to speak, with this video series. I should have probably been including all along since the beginning of the Disney Plus service, also highlighting the what's being dropped on the service each week that isn't just new original content exclusively for the service, but stuff that Disney's just adding to the service. So I thought, starting with this week, I would just go through the list of what's being added, not things that I've necessarily watched, but just, you know, talking about what they've put on, and I'll talk a little bit about it if I have actually watched it, but I'm not making the effort to watch every single thing like I am with the originals to review the content. And then I'm probably going to start calling this video series What's New on Disney Plus, or What's New This Week, or something like that. We'll figure that out. And then, you can expect, if you're watching these videos, to have a little bit of information about what's being added each week beyond just the original content. But also, I'll still be doing my recaps in this video of all the original content as well. So I have my handy notebook, as always, and I will dive right in. So this week added to Disney Plus, just the new content this week on Wednesday, the 8th of January, Disney Plus added Aladdin, the 2019 live-action Guy Ritchie film starring Mina Massoud and Will Smith. I actually did watch that this last week. I hadn't got a chance to see it yet until now, and I rather enjoyed it. I thought it was sorry, I'm a little fidgety. I thought it was an interesting take on the material. It was something different. They sort of made it their own. And if you've seen my review for the live-action Lady and the Tramp that was on the service, you'll know that that's something I generally appreciate out of these remakes, reboots, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, this one was kind of no different. I don't think it was my favorite one that they've done thus far. I think The Jungle Book is still probably my favorite, although I haven't seen The Lion King yet. That'll be dropping on the service later this month, I think. And I really enjoyed Beauty and the Beast. So, they are what they are. You sort of take them for what they're, what they're trying to do. But this one I rather enjoyed. I thought Will Smith was a highlight, and I thought that the things that they did different were interesting. So yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, maybe give it a try. If you're into these live action things, you'll probably like it. If the live action remake thing just isn't your cup of tea to begin with, and the whole concept sort of irks you, you're probably not going to be into it, just like you haven't with the rest. But if this is something you're into, you'll probably like it. Also added this last week on the 10th, Friday the 10th, in addition to the original content, were a short film called Destino, and Season 3 of Marvel's Runaways were added. Destino I actually watched, or Destino. It's an interesting little short film that I sort of missed the boat on when it originally came out. It was originally released back in 2003, and then subsequently was added to the special features of the Fantasia 2000 combo Blu-ray. And in both instances, I kind of missed the boat on it. But it's kind of a quirky, interesting artifact. This short film was a project originally sort of produced or worked on back in the 40s, 1945, by a Disney animator called John Hinch and Salvador Dali, the famous surrealist artist. They were sort of working on a project, for Walt Disney with his blessing or whatever. And they worked on it for like 8 months or something like that, and eventually worked up 17 seconds of an animation test, and they storyboarded the whole short. It ultimately became a 7-minute short film. They storyboarded the whole thing and worked up a 17-second animation test, but finances got pretty tight, and worrisome during the wartime, so Walt Disney sort of shelved the idea, and it really never got made. And then in 2000, or 1999, 2000, when the studio was working on Fantasia 2000, Walt's nephew, Roy E. Disney, sort of unshelved or uncovered the storyboards and everything that was left of Destino, and greenlit them to finish the film, the studio to finish the film. They handed it off to a sort of more independent experimental arm of the Disney Animation Studios in Paris called, I think, Walt Disney Animation Paris or something like that. And they were able to finish off the film. John Hench was still around when they made it eventually in 2002, 2003. So he helped them finish it off and sort of interpret he and Salvador Dali's original storyboards and notes. Also, Salvador Dali's wife had diaries that belonged to Dali, and they included information that they were able to help cobble together the rest of the film. So the 17 seconds animation test that they originally made back in the 40s is in the film, and then the teams finished off the rest of the film. And it is a remarkable short film. It's Salvador Dali's art basically come to life. It sort of tells the story of Kronos, the Greek personification of time, and how he becomes enamored or falls in love with a mortal woman named Dahlia. And the story is sort of immaterial. It's more of a it's very Fantasia-esque. I could see why they tried to uncover it during that time. It's sort of more of a moving art set to music and a general feeling and moving through, Dali scenery and stuff like that. And the fact that it sort of lived so long on life support or got dusted off in the Disney archives and then finished off is truly remarkable. And if you're a fan of Dali's art, or you want to see Disney do something really unique and interesting and like something you've never seen before, and if you're tired of sort of feeling like every studio produces the same old, this is very different. It's very unique, and I would encourage you to check it out. It's very remarkable. Marvel's Runaways season 3. I have not yet had the chance to dig into Runaways. Is a show produced as a Hulu original, based on the comic books by Brian K. Vaughan and Adrian Alphone, sorry. And the basis of the story is these 6 teens become united to fight a common threat, which are their parents. They all discover that their parents are sort of an evil crime syndicate, and they band together to try to combat their own parents. So that's sort of the log line, the gist of it. Like I said, I haven't watched it, not because I haven't been interested, but because, as you do in this day and age with streaming services and everything, you just get a backlog of stuff that you haven't been able to get around to yet, and this is one of those things. Other stuff has caught my attention or taken priorities ahead of it, but hopefully I'll get around to it as soon as I can. I am interested in it, but if this is a show that you've been following or interested in, or they had the first couple of seasons on there already when the service dropped, so if you watched it by now since November and you're wanting more content, season 3 is now on Disney Plus. So that's that. So those were sort of the new things that dropped on the service this week, and then the original content came out as well on Friday the 10th. A new episode of Pick of the Litter came out called Next Level Training. All of the dogs that made it to the advanced training are now going through all the phases of that. The first phase of everything was being with the puppy trainers and in their homes. The second phase then was passing the preliminary tests to get into the intensive guide dogs program. The third phase was the medical testing, and now they're on to phase 4, now that they've passed all that, and it starts to be these very specific intensive tests. Phase 4 is involves taking these dogs to like a mall where they can get used to boarding escalators and being in places with people, shopping places, places where if they were a guide dog, they might have to go. And so, yeah, they have to wear these little booties that help them get onto the escalators, and there's interesting stuff with that. And most of the dogs do fine. Oh, and another thing they do in that is they go to like a food court and they have chair targeting, which I thought was really interesting. These are things that if you are not a blind person, you just don't think about. And it's very interesting and enlightening to see these dogs in action and things that the guide dog trainers are planning for, and realizing to yourself, oh, of course they would, a dog would have to know how to do that if they were guiding a blind person, and of course that would be a thing that blind people would need to would want to have a dog do. One of those things is chair targeting, which is like they're in a food court and the dog has to be able to, like, independent of anybody, has to recognize a chair and lead a person to it without themselves jumping up into the chair or sitting in the chair, so that if a person needs to sit down, they have a chair to sit down in. So that was very interesting. Only one of the dogs needed extra help with that. I think it was Paco. He kept trying to want to jump up into the chair, but they were able to help correct him on that. Then the dogs went on to phase 5, which involved traffic issues. Like they had a person in a special guide dog's car, like pull into driveways while the person's walking down the sidewalk and stuff like that to test whether the dogs adequately stop ahead of time to help the people avoid cars. They take them into the streets to give them weird traffic situations, basically, that they manufacture to help the dogs learn their way around cars. And one of the interesting things I learned in that is they're testing dogs for something called intelligent disobedience, which is that the dog is able to learn how to disobey its handler's commands if need be. So, for example, if a blind person is walking the dog along and the dog stops and the blind person doesn't know why, and they keep saying, go ahead, keep walking, it's okay, keep going, and they give the dog a command, but there's something dangerous like a car, the dog has to learn the skill of knowing when to obey their handler's commands and when not to. If it's not in the best interest of the person, like if there's a car, they have to know that they have to learn that the danger of the car supersedes the command that they're being given. And in the training program, they call that intelligent disobedience, which I thought was very interesting and very remarkable that dogs can actually learn how to do that. One of the dogs, I think it was Pacino, struggled with it a little bit. Has a very slow pace in general as a dog. He just walks very slowly, and he's very like methodical, and he wasn't too alarmed when cars would show up. In fact, they showed one shot where like a car kind of came in to their space, and it even just nudged up against the dog before he would even back up. They kind of like, he just let the car come to him and it's like sort of push him off, and it was like, well, you can't really have that if you're guiding a person around. So they were teaching him those skills as well, and he started to take to him eventually. But at first he was a little weird with it. They also start detailing stuff about Amara and her potential of being a breeder dog, and it doesn't look like she probably will. They found her sister, a dog called Allegra, and she looked like a better candidate for breeding, so it looks like Amara is going to go back into the pool to potentially become a guide dog instead of a breeder dog. And then they go into phase 6, which is platforms. They go to like subway platforms and everything like that. That's like the next thing they have to do in case like a person lives in the city and they're taking public transportation and all that stuff, which is very common with the blind. So they start showing some of those trainings, and Paco was struggling a little bit with that at the end of the episode. So they're gonna detail that, what goes on with that in the next episode, and how far along they're getting in the program. They showed also a little bit of that dog Raffi, who got he didn't get a career change, but he got given to another trainer person to basically learn how to not be in the garbage and chew on shoes and stuff like that before he could be admitted into the intensive training program. So we'll see if he makes it where he needs to go or not. He's sort of being given a second chance. And the dog Paco at the end, I was talking about how he was struggling with the platforming and stuff. They just don't know if he's going to ultimately be fit or not, so they ended up handing him over to a master trainer at the end of this episode to see if the master trainer, who's got like years and years of intensive training experience, will be able to do anything with him, and if not, he'll have to get career changed. He's sort of on his last second chance as well. So that's kind of where they're going with that. It still has the artificial drama and stuff that I don't like, but the more they go through the program, the more I'm personally interested, just because of, seeing what the dogs need to do and being interested in the topic. But the presentation is lacking for me and probably will continue to be. But that's Pick of the Litter. They released a new Pixar Spark Shorts short film this week. It's a lovely little film called Loop. The short film is about a boy and a girl who are both in an urban canoe camp. They go to like a park where they're floating canoes on a lake in like a summer camp situation, and learning the skills of canoeing. And the boy is a boy who's like late to the club. He shows up late and he's trying to hop in a canoe to catch up with the rest of the people who are canoeing around. And the last person that's left to be his partner is a girl who has autism, and she is, for the most part, nonverbal. She can verbalize a little bit with like making sounds and gestures, but not much. And she also has a sort of a like a comfort thing where she uses this sound loop thing on her phone that is comforting to her. She likes putting the sound next to her ear, and it kind of helps keep her directed and calm and stuff like that. So he ends up getting in the canoe with her. The leader of the club encourages him, like, get to know her and it'll be fine. And they do fine. He starts to try to learn how to communicate with her a little bit, and then like a situation comes up where she's overstimulated by the sound of a motorboat, and they get beached in their canoe, and she gets difficult to communicate with, and it's sort of about them learning how to communicate with each other without being able to necessarily use their words, and just sort of learning each other. And it's very sweet and very interesting, and it's a very nice example of how we can learn each other and be better in those kinds of situations. One of the things that I thought was really cool about it is I watched they always include a making of with these Spark Shorts things. It's like a short making of film. And in this one I learned that the voice of the girl, or of the girl in the short film, was actually voiced by a girl with autism who is also mostly nonverbal, but has some verbalization ability. And that was really cool that they went out and found this young woman to be the voice of their character and stuff like that. So that's Loop. It's a very sweet film, and if that sounds interesting to you, I think you'll like it quite a bit. Forky asks a question. He wants to know, what is reading? And he gets help from the little kids that are peas in a pod, and Mr. Spell, the Mr. Speak and Spell machine. And it's sort of a funny gag where the peas are trying to teach him how to read out of this cookbook, and he's struggling with the letters and everything. And Mr. Spell comes along and he's like, "Did somebody say reading? Do you need help with reading?" And they're like, "No, we're fine." And he sadly walks off, and he's getting help from the peas instead of the Speak and Say machine. But it turns out that Forky is actually messing with the peas because he already knows how to read, and Mr. Spell actually taught him how to read already, and they were both playing a prank together on the peas. So it's kind of a sweet little thing, and it's funny as always. Forky asks a question. The Marvel Hero Project is about a young man named Sidney, the spectacular Sidney, who lives in St. Louis. And he has started a literacy group for young African-American boys, and it's gone national, basically. It's like a reading club called, I think it's called, Books for Bros or Book Bros or something like that. But it's really cool because he found when he was a lot younger that he had a love for reading, and found in his environment, in his neighborhoods and stuff, that there was sort of a misunderstanding or stigma about young black kids reading, that like they just didn't do it or something like that, or that they aren't interested or whatever, and that's obviously not true. And so he just sort of wanted to get other people in his community, and other people like him to be interested in reading the same way that he's interested. And so, yeah, he started this book club that got really popular, and eventually he started like national chapters of it, and he hopes for it to keep growing and get worldwide and all that stuff. And he's really doing a good thing by encouraging, I mean, not just young black kids how to read, but anybody how to read, increasing literacy in our world, especially in underprivileged areas. People are getting more access to books and more encouragement to read, and that's nothing but a good thing. And he's doing something really, really awesome, engaging people, and literacy is so important. So I, just like the rest of the kids on this show, I applaud this young man, and am very impressed by his desire to want to do something, and his heart for activism and literacy is very inspiring. So, Marvel Hero Project, very interesting and awesome as always. Disney Family Sundays, the craft of the week is an Alice in Wonderland teacup lamp, which the host Amber Camp Gerstel keeps calling a wonder lamp, which is kind of fun. And basically, it's like they're just taking all these old teacups and teapots and gluing them together in a stack, and they decorate a lampshade and put the lampshade on top. And instead of it being like the kind of light that would have a cord and a light bulb and stuff, they just put like a tap light inside the top, so like the little kids could turn it on and off. Very simple, very cool. This is something that I would probably actually do. My wife is a big tea fan and teapot fan and Alice in Wonderland person. So this is something I would probably do, but I might try to get a little bit more involved with it myself and try to like repurpose an old lamp that we have or something like that, or find something at the Goodwill and see what you could actually make out of it and what sorts of old tea stuff you could find. This would be a fun project for me personally to like go to a secondhand store and just like see how much stuff you could find and try to put something together. But the way they do it in the show is also really cool, turns out really cool, and they tell you everything that you need in order to do it the way that they do it in the episodes. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you as a personal craft or a family craft or something like that, Disney Family Sundays. High School Musical, the series. This was the series finale, I think, or the season finale, called Act 2. And basically it's where you pick off. EJ jumps in to take over for Ricky, who's freaking out, who has like a moment with his mom in the hallway and expresses his disdain for her boyfriend and all that stuff. And she tries to explain to him that things are better between, like that his dad and his mom, they've both moved on and everything's okay, and Ricky's just struggling to catch up and all that stuff. So they have that moment, and EJ has a nice little moment with Gina where you find out that EJ actually bought her a plane ticket so she could get back to Utah for the show, and that was a really nice gesture. And they're very warm with each other. They're not like flirting or anything. It's just a very nice, tender moment. And the rest of the act goes pretty well. Nene is able to coax Ricky back into their number to sing Soarin' with each other. And that's turns out really good. And all of a sudden, Big Red becomes a wizard with the lighting and everything. He picks it up really quickly, and Mr. Mazzaro is really impressed and wants him to join the robotics club. It's like he finally finds his thing that he's really good at. Big Red stops being so like apathetic about stuff, so that's really cool. And he impresses his family and everything. And everybody has their moment, Seb has a great moment as Sharpay, and everybody does really good in the show. Basically, it finishes off really well, and they all take their bows. They congratulate Miss Jen on doing a good job of directing everybody. The scout from the Denver thing is in the crowd, but she gets up and walks out during the curtain call thing, and they think things are going badly with that, but they don't know. Anyway, they finish off the show. It works out well. Nene has her moment with Ricky. Finally, they admit that they love each other, and they have kisses and smooches, and everything goes really well, and it's cute and nice. There's a big giant basket of flowers that was delivered at the beginning of the show in the last episode that doesn't seem to have a card with it, and nobody knows where it came from. And we find out in this finale episode that it's actually for Ashlyn, and it came from Big Red. And so even though he was like being weird to her in the last episode, it turns out that he really likes her, of course, and gives her this big impressive bouquet of flowers, and that's really sweet. And it sort of seems like all's well that ends well. They plant some seeds for the next season of the show. They're obviously going to be doing another season. They're going to be working on a spring musical. Miss Jen hints about, wait till you see what we do for the spring musical. Stuff like that. And everything seems to be going hunky-dory. They also hint that Gina may be staying in town, that like Ashlyn has a spare room in her house, and Gina might be able to stay there and actually be able to live there instead of having to move back with her mom in Washington, supposing that everything is cool with her mom. They don't outright say that, but I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. They kind of hint at it. And then at the very end, Nene actually gets approached by the scout from the Denver Performing Arts program, and she offers her a spot, like within a month's time, to go out and participate in the program. But obviously now that that's come through unexpectedly, that may be an issue, because now things are going good with Ricky, and she's, everything is going the way that it was supposed to before she applied, when she was all disgruntled. And I'm sure that's going to be a plot point for the next season. Like, do I want to do this? But everything's going so well. Don't I want to stay at school with my friends and my boyfriend or whatever? And they're probably going to encourage her to go to Denver. Who knows? It'll be one of the big issues of the next season. And then in an awesome little coda to the episode, if you stay sort of like mid credits, they show a shot of Big Red in the gym when everybody's gone, after everything's over, and he actually knows how to tap dance. He puts on tap shoes and then taps in the gym, and you find out that he's actually a really good tapper. And Ashlyn actually sees him do that, and she's really impressed, and then they kiss each other, and it's really sweet and cute, because they're sweet and cute, and everything has a happy ending for this season. So that was sort of the wrap-up episode, and everything is really pleasant and fun. Yeah, it was a fun show. It was enjoyable for the season. Very rom-com-y, teen rom-com stuff. Very cute and corny, but it's so self-aware that in a lot of respects you can't help but like it. If you're going to watch it at all, you'll probably enjoy it. If this sort of thing just straight up isn't for you, you're probably not even going to watch it. So that's High School Musical, the series. It was a fun season. In this week's episode of Encore, they follow a cast from Fish Creek, Wisconsin from 2007 that actually performed High School Musical. And it was sort of interesting because they were coming back to perform roles that are more suitable for high school, which is sort of the opposite of what happened with Pippin, where you have like all these adults that were like, back in the day, they were performing like avant-garde material that they understand better now. Now they're going back and playing high schoolers now that they're a little bit older, and that's sort of interesting. They grew up, Fish Creek, Wisconsin is a really small town, and so there's some interesting things with that I kind of relate to. I grew up in a very small town, and some of the things in there ring true about small town life, and some of the people who stay and some of the people who go away, and everybody knowing each other and stuff like that. Like when Disney comes into town to produce this episode and remount High School Musical in their school, like everybody, this is like the biggest thing to ever happen in this town. Like everybody knows about it. It's a big deal. Everybody in town is interested and cares about it. So that's sort of the interesting thing of this, really. And they do a good job with High School Musical. It's High School Musical. It's not the best musical on the list of the season. in general, but it's fun. And having recently had High School Musical, the series on the brain, I've got all the songs rattling around in my head and stuff like that. So it was interesting to see adults kind of take it on. So yeah, that was Encore this week. It was pretty cool. Not the best episode of the show by any stretch, but a good one, an interesting one. The World According to Jeff Goldblum. He investigates the world of cosmetics. Um, and this is kind of an interesting one because even though Jeff Goldblum wears makeup and stuff in the movies, he's not particularly a big fan of cosmetics on himself or like on his wife or anything. He's more of a fan of just natural beauty and that sort of thing. But he knows that it's a big popular thing and a money making industry, and becomes more interested in it and actually learns to appreciate a lot of what's going on in that world, particularly through the avenues of he goes to like a makeup convention thing called Sephoria, and he goes to a drag show and sort of gets involved in the backstage process, talking with them about the specifics of drag makeup and, all of those things, and how makeup is an important part in that art form to help people get transformed into the ways they want to look, and so on. And then one of the really cool things to me in this episode is he goes to have a session with this artist called Mimi Choi, who's gotten pretty popular on the internet. And she used to be like a preschool teacher, and now she's full time just an artist. She basically got popularity by decorating her own face with makeup, but sort of making these like super artistic pieces out of her face and makeup. It's really hard to describe, but I would encourage you to go check out her work and just like see what I'm talking about, or watch the episode and see what I'm talking about. A lot of it is like impressionistic or surreal. There's like all kinds of she uses all kinds of art styles to basically make her face of a canvas. And do really interesting things with it. And then when Jeff goes, he allows her to do a piece on his face as well. So that's really cool. And just seeing her art is really, I think it's really neat. So I really enjoyed that segment. And yeah, he learns how to kind of appreciate a little bit more what's going on in the world of cosmetics and why people are so interested, and what sort of the more finer points are. And then finally, in One Day at Disney, the One Day at Disney shorts, they spent 4 or 5 minutes with the cast and crew of the ABC show Modern Family. There's particular interviews with Eric Stonestreet and Jesse Tyler Ferguson, but they also show like their table read process, and just a few behind the scenes things of the show Modern Family. So if you're a fan of that show, this would be interesting to you, or if you just want to see a little bit of the backstage process of a multicam show, where they sort of shoot with multiple it's more of a TV show that they shoot like a film rather than like a single camera show in front of a live studio audience and all that. They shoot this more like a film. So if you want to see what kind of goes into TV production just a tiny little bit, then yeah, it's an interesting little thing to document, to watch. So that's One Day at Disney for this week, and that's pretty much all the Disney content for this week. Like I said, this is going to turn into more of a what's new on Disney Plus, so I'll be coming back with that next week. And again, hopefully more and more timely, as I'm getting caught up on lots of things, and I'm getting back to more of a regular schedule. So thanks for hanging in there. Thanks as always for watching these. I hope you have an excellent week. I hope your month is going well and your year's getting started off well. And until next time, we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.